All right, guys. Well, here we go. Welcome to the Inner Circle Workshop, Mindset Performance Academy students. Coach Andrew here. Hey, I'm excited to dive in today. I know a lot of athletes are in need of a boost of encouragement and motivation, not just right now, but in any time. And so as we get into this, I wanted to first share a quick story. Just the other day, such a cool experience for me. I was on a podcast with an athlete that I've been coaching in physical performance as well as mental performance for, gosh, it's probably about 8 years now. And it all came together when this guy who hosts a podcast called the Kid First Podcast, his name's Dave. We connected and he said, "Hey, how about you bring on an athlete with you to my podcast, and we could talk shop and just talk about the journey and the experience and see how we can help other athletes along the way." And so, athlete, I'm talking to you right now because I wanted to share this with you. This athlete, her name is Rachel. She plays Division I softball. She's an absolute rock star on and off the field. And I wanted to share a couple of things that this girl has done to get to the place where she's on a podcast literally 2 hours before she went out to play in a game, by the way. She was getting ready to play in a pretty serious softball game against a top competitor. And how did she get here? How did she get to this place where she's on a podcast with her coach, sharing wisdom with athletes? I'll tell you how. One day at a time, one practice at a time, one training session at a time, one conversation at a time where she looked her coaches in the eyes, one act of leadership at a time where she reached down to help an athlete that was younger or that wasn't as far along as she was. One decision at a time, this girl has built up to the point where not only is she dominating, and I mean dominating on the softball field at the highest level in college softball, but she's mentally in a state of peace. She's happy. She's confident. She's not having that roller coaster of emotions every day. Sure, she has her challenges like anybody else, but man, her habits and her consistency over the years have just gotten her to this place where she is so successful. And I'm loving watching her journey. And it was so great to be a part of a podcast with her where we got to just go back and forth and share stories and share information to help athletes. So I will get you that podcast out as soon as it comes out. But I want to dive into what we cover every single month, which is what is a winning athlete? Number one, a winning athlete chooses their own definition of success. That is something that separates out winning athletes from losing athletes. And this is called the winning athlete inner circle. So it's important that we define what a winning athlete is. Choosing your own definition of success that's based on what you can control and what really matters to you, which isn't always what everybody else cares about. And so you having that steadfastness and discipline to know who you are. Number two, winning athletes always ask, how can I contribute 5 times more often than what can I give? It's about what can I give, not what can I get. And that's what Rachel has done extremely well over the years. And that's why she's been so successful. Winning athletes lean into hard, uncomfortable things. They don't shy away just because things get difficult. This is the Buffalo mindset we talk about in my second book, Athlete, I'm Talking to You. And then lastly, they spend 1% of their time, just one, focused on problems. And then 99% focused on solutions. This is something that makes a winning athlete. And you might ask, well, what is 1%? Is that really practical? Yeah, it's 14.4 minutes a day. So I'm going to give you 14.4 minutes per day to focus on problems. And even if you want to dwell on them, you can a little bit. You've got a little bit of time there. But then the rest of the time, we're talking about how do we make this better? How do we improve? How do we solve this challenge? Man, I'm not as fast as I want to be. Perfect. We identified the problem. We spent 1% of our time on it. Now let's talk about what are the things we can do to get faster. And you can do this with every area of your life. So 4 steps for success on these calls. Number 1, pen and paper. Writing creates clarity. Clarity precedes your breakthrough. So we're going to write. You're going to lean in, be the buffalo. We also go fast. This session today, it's going to be like 30 minutes, no more. So quick, but it's going to be powerful. And one thing today, the goal is for you to get one thing that sticks out to you that creates a breakthrough. And then lastly, just be honest with yourself. Play all out. Engage in the exercises. If I say to clap it up real quick, clap it up real quick, clap it up real quick, one of the ways you'll get the most out of it is if you just clapped it up with me. So clap it up real quick, clap it up real quick, clap it up real quick. There you go. That's how you be successful on these calls. Quick, I want to do a reflection. One of the things that is really important if you want to be a healthy, happy, high-performing athlete is you want to measure your progress backwards from who you were to who you are now. Not, man, like I need to be further along. It's like, no, we measure our progress backwards. So in the last 30 days, just write down quickly 3 wins or ways that you've made progress in the last 30 days. Just real quick, just write them down as they're flowing. Think back 30 days ago. Did you have a couple of really good games? Did you decide to, read a book? Are you on this call right now? Have you found that your mechanics are improving in your sport? That you've seen progress in your endurance or your conditioning? Did you have a courageous conversation with your coach? Did you show great leadership by helping out some younger teammates? Did you just stay positive when you got benched instead of, getting mad like you normally used to? Like just 3 wins, right? What are some ways that you did well in the last 30 days? It doesn't have to be these huge, I signed my offer to a college program. Like, no, like we just need to get in the habit of finding some small wins. So as you're writing those down, I want to dive into what today's conversation is going to be all about. I'm calling this the 3 decisions to dominate. 3 decisions to dominate. And I've shared this with a couple of high-level sports teams so far, and it was very impactful for them. So I'm going to share it with you guys today. Number 1, since your results follow your standards, it would make sense to make a decision to raise your standards. If you want to increase your results, raise your standards. We're going to talk about some challenging things today, such as, have you actually lowered your standards for yourself because it's easier? We're going to talk about that today. Number 2, it's the decision to do WIT and B, WYNTB. I'll tell you what the acronym means in a minute. For the good of the cause, for the good of the team. And then lastly, the decision to be the bean. Number 1, raise your standards. This is Megan. Megan played lacrosse at UMBC for 4 years. When she first got to UMBC, she had come off a great senior season. She was dominating in high school. She gets to college. 2 weeks in, her coach looks at her and says, Megan, I'm not sure why you're even here. You're not the player that I thought you were going to be. You don't have grit. You don't have the determination. You don't have the skills that we need you to have. That's what her coach said to her. Now, in that moment, Megan was tempted to lower her standards for what she believed was possible for herself, lower her standards for what she demanded from herself. Well, if I'm never going to play on this team anyway, if I'm not going to be a starter, then I might as well lower my standards for how I work at practice or for my leadership or for my work ethic. Like, I better lower my standards for what my goals are. No, she didn't do that. She came to me and together we created a better plan, a plan where she didn't actually keep her old standards. Her coach's words to her made her say to herself, you know what? My standards aren't high enough. Coach said that to me because my standards for my grit, for my determination, for my skills, my standards aren't high enough. I'm going to double them. I'm going to double my standards. And from today moving forward, I'm going to be a different player. That's what she did. And what happened was Megan, over the next 3 to 4 years, the following season, sophomore year, it took her time, right? It took her time. She got a little bit of playing time as a freshman, but man, not near as much as she wanted. But by her sophomore year, because of her consistency, she started some of the games and she was starting to see some good playing time. By junior year, she was starting just about every game. She was starting to really find her groove. And by senior year, she was the captain. She was a starter. She crushed it. She had a fantastic season, all because she decided to raise her standards. So my question for you, athlete, well, before we get there, remember this. The person in the room with the highest standards is always the leader. The good thing is there can be more than one leader in a room. But man, this is true. The people who you look up to the most, the people who are leading your team, they've got high standards, not just for themselves either, by the way. The leader has high standards for what they believe others can accomplish. And it's not ridiculous, unkind standards, right? It's not like they just expect you to be the best and don't want to give you any help along the way. No. The leader believes in the other teammates, just knows they have more in their tank and pulls out the best in you. We know this is true. The person in the room with the highest standards is always the leader. The question is, how do you carry yourself in good times and in bad times? What are your standards for how you carry yourself in good times and bad times? What are your standards for the effort you put in? What are your standards for the results that you get? Have you just settled for the position on the team that you have? Maybe this year your role is to be the assist man or the assist girl or the one that comes in and just does the dirty work. Like maybe that's your role this year, but are you leaving your standards at that? Because that would mean that you're settling. You're not trying to continuously become 1% better every day. So your standards for your results matter. What are your standards for how you respond to negative circumstances? Your standards determine your results. Just like your standards for the girlfriend or boyfriend you pick, if you're old enough to date, like those standards should be pretty high. The same is true for you as an athlete, right? Results follow standards. So the question that I want you to spend a minute writing on, we're going to take 60 seconds, do our reflection. Have you lowered your standards for yourself and what you believe is possible because of your current results or because of what someone said, right? Just like this coach told Megan that she wasn't good enough and she didn't have enough grit. She didn't lower her standards for her grit. She actually raised them. Or maybe coach told you to get on the bench and you heard you're not good enough. Maybe somebody told you once that you're really not a hard worker. Or maybe someone told you once that you're really not the leader type. Maybe someone told you once that you're not a good scorer. You're just a good defensive player. And so you lowered your standards for your scoring ability because, hey, you know what? At least I'm a good scorer. I mean, at least I'm a good defensive player. So have you lowered your standards and have you let your current circumstances, maybe you're going through an injury right now, a setback. Maybe coach has decided to bench you or play a younger player over you. Have you let that limit your vision for your future? Are you lowering your standards? I want to talk to you real quick about the difference between contentment and complacency. Complacent goes like this. You know what? At least I accomplished, blank, making it to college sports or getting in the starting lineup or winning a few games. I'm good. Whatever happens, happens. It's fine. Deep down, you really don't believe that, but you're just trying to protect yourself from disappointment. That's what somebody who's complacent says. But contentment, there's a fine line. Contentment says, I'm genuinely satisfied and grateful with where I'm at right now. I may not be where I want to be, achieving the goals I want to score, starting. I may not be where I want to be, but I'm working hard and believe I'm getting better every day. I'm not settling. I'm not stopping, but I am content and I'll continue contributing the best I can in whatever ways I can. Which one describes you today? Which one describes who you want to be? Complacency equals regret and this slow progressive decline, whereas contentment equals peace and progress. Peace. I'm happy with where I'm at, right? I'm proud of myself, but I am not stopping. That's contentment, and we want to aim for contentment as athletes. So quickly, 3 minutes, tops, maybe not even. Have you let your current circumstances cause you to lower your standards? What are your standards for yourself? Just write about those. And then what are your standards for the team that you play on? Take a minute, work through that. Staring at a poster right now on the wall that says, find joy in the journey. Find joy in the journey. That's what it's all about. What are your standards? Raise your standards, raise your results. Decision number 2. You need to decide, here's the acronyms explained, to do whatever it takes and be whoever you need to be for the good of the cause. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean you just need to sacrifice and train until midnight and be someone you're not to be, to contribute maximally to your team or to your mission? No, that's not what this means. Here's what it means. If you read my first book, The Youth Truth, you know what this represents. You see, what is the main part of this image? What's the most important part? It's a little bit of a trick question because you're probably saying, well, it's the cup of coffee. That's what's most important. You see, the cup of coffee in this picture seems to be the most important thing. It's in the spotlight, right? It's like it's what everybody wants. The coffee in the cup. It's what everybody wants. The cup of coffee, right? It's the best thing there. The other stuff, what's that matter? Well, I'll tell you why it matters. That sleeve right there. Have you ever picked up a hot cup of coffee with no sleeve? What happens? It burns your hand, that's right. The sleeve is essential. The sleeve is important. Without the sleeve, the cup of coffee is almost useless because you can't drink it, you can't hold it. The sleeve protects the coffee. It has the coffee's back. It assists the cup. But then there's a third component. Yeah, it's the napkin. Now, why does this matter? Well, I don't know about you, but every coffee shop I've ever gone into, there's coffee spills. There's stains. There's coffee just spills all over. It's what happens. And the napkin is there to clean up the messes, to do the dirty work. Without the napkin, a coffee shop would be borderline disgusting. It would be sticky. There'd be stains everywhere. The napkin has a critical role. And as an athlete, here's the truth. What does the cup, the sleeve, and the napkin mean to you? As an athlete, I know what it's like to want to be the cup, to want to be in the spotlight. I know what it's like. And when you're not there, you think that you don't matter. Your role is inconsequential. Your role just doesn't matter. It's the only thing that matters is the spotlight, the cup of coffee, being the star player. But here's the reality. When you decide, I'm going to be the best darn napkin that this team has ever seen, I'm going to do the dirty work. I'm going to hustle. I'm going to set up the cones at the beginning of practice. I'm going to take them down. I'm going to be there for people. I'm going to hustle. I'm going to do what it takes to clean up messes. Like when you decide to be a great napkin, eventually, because you were a good steward in that moment and for a long time, you eventually will have an opportunity, I guarantee you, to be the sleeve or to be the cup. Now, that might not be what you are supposed to be forever, but you'll have the opportunity to be that. And as the sleeve, if you're the person that's always assisting the scorer, if you're the person that's always on defense and you're making the great plays, but you're never quite in the spotlight, if you're the lineman that's, pushing through, but as you're never quite getting the compliments and the praise, remember, eventually you'll be the cup, you'll be in the spotlight, but the sleeve is so important. And you don't need anyone else to tell you that for you to believe it yourself. We need to stop relying on the fans and our coaches and our peers to give us praise and compliments. We need to stop relying on that to feel valuable. You're valuable because of who you are, not because of what you do. And it's really important that you remember this story of the cup, the sleeve, and the napkin. Next time you're feeling down, disappointed, discouraged, that you're not the spotlight, you're not getting the praise, remind yourself, I am valuable. I am an asset to this team, and I don't need someone else to tell me it to believe it. Lastly, the decision to be the bean. My question for you is this: are you a carrot, an egg, or a coffee bean? 1975, Damon West gets arrested for a felony charge, drug possession, drug distribution. He had just finished up playing football at a D1 school, quarterback, and his life fell apart. He got into drugs, got addicted, and the cops raided his house and arrested him on multiple felony charges. And he was sentenced to life in prison. Life. But something happened to Damon when he walked into the prison gates. Damon was met by a guy who said, Damon, I need you to come over here real quick. He said, Damon, most guys in your position that are going into the prison that you're going into, most just don't survive. Most do not survive. They die. And here's why. He said, Damon, do you know what happens to a carrot when it goes into boiling water? Yeah, it gets soft, right? He said, exactly. He said, there's a portion of people that go into prison and they become a carrot. They become soft. They become sad and depressed and bitter. And they just, little by little, they die. And then they get taken advantage of. They get taken advantage of by the other inmates. They beat them up. And eventually, sometimes they kill them. He said, if you become a carrot when you go in there and you get soft, he said, you're done for. He said, but then there's a second type of person that comes into prison. He said, it's the egg. Do you know what happens to an egg when it gets put into boiling water? Prison is like boiling water, man. He said, do you know what happens when an egg gets put into boiling water? Damon said, yeah, it gets hard. He said, exactly. He said, when you go into that prison, if you start to become angry and try to puff your chest up and try to be the baddest guy in there, and you're just bitter and angry all the time and aggressive, he said, you will not be the most aggressive guy in there. There's always going to be someone bigger than you. And those gangs, they'll find you and they will kill you. If you become an egg, you're done for. But there's a third person. There's a third type of person that goes into prison, Damon. And this is the most rare of them all. Very few people become this kind of person. He said, what happens when a coffee bean gets placed into boiling hot water? He said, nothing. Nothing happens to the coffee bean. He said, exactly. The water changes. The water becomes the coffee. He said, Damon, I need you to listen to me very clearly. He said, you are the coffee bean. You need to find a way to make friends with these different gangs. You don't need to be involved in just one. He said, you need to become friends with different gangs. You need to be the positive source of light when you walk into a room. You need to be the change agent, not the person who other people are influencing. You need to be the leader, but a different kind of a leader. You need to be the coffee bean. Damon walked into that prison, and for the next 7 years, he remembered that story. And due to many miraculous circumstances that he could only attribute to the work of God, he got out in 7 years. And he has been spending the rest of his life speaking to inmates in prison, encouraging them to be the coffee bean, speaking at colleges, to the top universities in the world, to football teams, to sports programs, to Fortune 500 companies. He wrote a best-selling book with John Gordon called The Coffee Bean. And he's now changing the world, one person, one prison, one team at a time, because he's decided to be the coffee bean. And so, athlete, I'm talking to you. Are you the coffee bean? Have you made a decision that you will be the coffee bean, no matter what environment you go into, no matter what kind of team you're on, even if you have a rough coach, a mean coach, even if you have players on the team who are always trying to knock you down, that don't want the best for you? Have you decided to be the coffee bean, or have you started to get soft like a carrot and you just put your head down and said, whatever, I don't even care anymore? Have you become the egg, hardened, angry, aggressive, mad? I would encourage you today, decide to be the coffee bean. 3 decisions to dominate. Number 1, raise your standards. Number 2, do whatever it takes. Be whoever you need to be for the good of the team. Cup, the sleeve, the napkin. And then lastly, be the bean. My friends, go forward. I've got my new book coming out on April 23rd. Grab a copy if you'd like, and learn the 12 keys to unlock your full potential. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.